You can't afford to seek any external validation right now at this season in your life. This season in your life is way too important for you to, in any way, focus on any external validation from anyone. It has to come internal. There's so much happening right now in life. And when you are determined to walk in the direction that God has called you to, and especially for those of you all who are leaders and coaches and mentors and entrepreneurs and business owners, and maybe even head of household, any any one of you that are in any capacity where you have people dependent on you, you cannot afford to seek the external validation because you will be let down. That's just the fact. That doesn't mean that someone is hateful or mean or is doing anything intentionally, but we by design, Romans 3:23 teaches us we all mess up. We all fall short. So when you're seeking that external validation, even seeking someone validating the dream that God gave you, the vision you're working on. This is why you have to protect that vision. And you can't always go around even talking about what you're working on. How about go do something first with it before you try to get the opinion of others in terms of what they think? It never fails. Whenever God puts a vision or dream in me, when I begin to talk about it too soon, letting people know what I'm about to do, what I'm getting ready to do. I've noticed that in almost not every case, but in almost all those cases, it either slows me down, or I actually don't even end up doing the thing. Because I'm taking in too many opinions from too many different people, if that makes any sense. But any type of external validation, whether it has to do with a dream or not, it could just even be getting the wanting the love and the approval from someone. You cannot afford at this season in life, none of us can, to seek that external validation. You have to vet in the spirit what has been given to you. I've been talking about this quite a bit, even inside of Unlocking Greatness, the live workshop sessions that I have, and with all of the clarity calls. I've been having a lot of clarity conversations with a lot of people these past several weeks. And one of the things that I've been talking to a lot of them about, especially a lot of the leaders, don't ever try to get something in the physical that you didn't vet and get first in the spirit, because that opposition and that resistance is definitely going to come. Hands down, it's going to come. And you have to know what's already been given to you. That's why in this season of life, you have to remember who you are and that you are chosen. And when you're chosen, you don't need the external validation. And I know it feels good at times, and I know we all are human, and we at times need it or seek it. But this season in life is too important. This is a season in life where you're going to have to make moves, not only at times in secret, but make moves that's just between you and God. That's not to mean that you don't make the announcement and let people know what's going on. There's nothing wrong with that. But once you've done the thing, once you've set the thing up, it's too important of a season to depend on external validation. It's too important. There's a chapter in my book Necessary, and I've read it to you all a number of times before. It's titled "You Are a Lion." The very end of this chapter, there's a reflection, which I hardly ever read through the reflection whenever I read from the chapter, but I'm going to read through this short reflection, because in that story about You Are a Lion, and you all know that story. If you haven't read Necessary, you can get the audio book or the video book, or you can get the book pretty much in any bookstore worldwide. But it's a beautiful story about a situation I went through with one of my children. You all know I have four adult kids. And this happened years ago when one of my children was really going through something, and just completely devastated that a friend no longer wanted to be friends. And I just remember that moment when I had to remind my child that you are a lion. And it reminded me of before my mother died. And I'll never in my life forget this. When I said, Mom, I'm not that strong. And some of the very last words my mother said to me, she said, You are a lion. She couldn't even speak at that point. She could only mouth the words. And she said, You are a lion. You are strong and you will make it. And I said, Mom, I'm not that strong, because everything in life was just going left field for me. And she said, You are strong. You're going to make it. And it took me quite a while to realize she was referring to that strength in God. And even though in the moment I just didn't feel it. But anyway, the reflection, I just want to read the reflection. This is at the end of the chapter, and I'm just going to read it. To this day, when I am tempted to be afraid or worry about any situation in life, I find myself going into my closet, which by the way is my secret place with God, just in case if you don't know, if you're, just starting to listen to this podcast. I find myself going into my closet and asking him, tell me again, who do you say I am? I'm sorry, I forgot. I need to be reminded again of who I am in your presence. Those are the exact words I say to God when I forget who I am. I also say those words when I start to rely on my own strength and forget what I am capable of achieving or overcoming. Sometimes I simply have to be reminded that I am a child of God. And the scripture I reference right there is First John, not First John, is John chapter 1, verse 12. I simply have to be reminded that I am a child of God and nothing is impossible with him. And that's Luke 137. And again, that's just a reflection from the end of the chapter that's titled, You Are a Lion, from my book, Necessary. You all, sometimes I forget. Sometimes I forget who I am. I don't sit in my closet often just because I have nothing else to do or because I'm trying to be Miss Religious Woman. I sit in there really for one of three reasons. One, I want wisdom and direction. And two, I do love being in his presence, but I sit in there to get wisdom and direction, to get guidance. And I sit in there because a lot of times I just have to be reminded. Like, I don't know about you guys, but my goodness, by the end of the day, you're tired. So many things are happening in the world and in your family and in the phone calls and the this and the that, even though I hardly ever answer my phone. If anyone knows me, you guys know I don't answer my phone hardly at all. But even still, it's so much that happens in the world that by the end of the day, you're just drained. Which is why I do truly believe the Bible teaches us that we need to pray continuously. All kinds of prayers all throughout the day. We need to be in prayer, but it's so much that happens by the end of the day. Sometimes I'm barely crawling into my closet, and sometimes I fall asleep. I be so tired. Sometimes I'm like, God, I'm so sorry I fell asleep on you. I could wake up, you guys, and it could be like 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't fell asleep on the Lord. I literally sometimes said, Jesus, I'm so sorry I fell asleep on you. And I would wake up like completely disoriented in my closet. And I keep the lights off. It's dark when I'm in there. I just close the door and it's just completely black. And I just said, Lord, and I wake up and I'm disoriented because I can't remember, am I in my bed? Am I downstairs? Am I in my room? Like, where am I? Anyway, I don't even know why I just shared that part, but you guys get my point. I have to sit in that space with him because many times I just have to be reminded, and I say to him, God, I'm just so sorry I forgot. Can you remind me again? Who am I in your presence? And what I mean by that is I have to just be reminded. This is what keeps me from seeking external validation, because if I'm not too careful with it, I know me enough to know. If I'm not too careful with it, I'll begin to seek that external validation, the compliments or the praise from someone else, right? Or the pat on the back, you're doing a good job, or thank you so much, or yeah, that's a good plan that you plan on doing, Z. I begin to seek it not knowingly, but in hindsight, I can see at times when I'm relying on that because you just want some validation that what you're doing is good. But when you sit in his presence and he reminds you, I wish I can explain it, but it's as if you can see who you are in the spirit. And it's as if you're not even in your human body anymore. And I probably shouldn't say it like that because some people could take that the wrong way. But it's just, I don't see myself almost like, it's hard to put in words. God, give me the way to say it. I just don't focus on the physical in that moment. It's almost as if, I can't explain it, but almost like in the spirit, like this massive, large, um, the only thing I can think of is spirit, almost like a light, like being on a battlefield, like a soldier, right? And you get empowered, you get strengthened. You begin to speak life over yourself and life over your circumstances, and you just stand. Sometimes when I'm in my closet, because I'm not always on my knees, sometimes I just stand. I literally just stand, and sometimes I lift my hands in the air, and it's almost as if you're in the spirit, like you're in the presence of God. And sometimes I just have to be reminded. I can't even tell you all how many times I've said to him, God, I'm sorry I forgot. Can you remind me again of who I am? And then he begins to speak to me. And then within a few minutes, it's almost as if I can't explain it, but it's almost as if you're completely transformed. You all, this is why we have to seek his presence and be reminded. Otherwise, you'll have your butt out there. And I know this because I've done it many times before. You will have your butt out there being stressed and anxious about any and everything. That's number one. You will have your butt out there chasing all types of things. I think there's a podcast episode I did 3 or 4 years ago. I think it's called Stop Chasing Seeds or something like that, right? But you have yourself out there chasing all types of seeds that don't even belong to you. In other words, somebody think you'll be good at this, so you're trying that. Somebody think you'll be good at this, so you're trying. You'll be all over the place. You saw something on TikTok and you want to do what this person's doing, because you're all over the place, walking around not having definiteness of purpose. That's what I call it, right? Or you can find yourself, and I've talked to a lot of leaders lately. These clarity calls that I have every week. If I haven't been on a clarity call with you all, I welcome you to join me on just about all of my social media channels. Somewhere you should be able to see in the bio a link to join a clarity call. And by the way, you can only be on one. Otherwise, I'd be on them all the time with the same people. But I've been having a lot of clarity calls with people. And I'd say at least half of the people on these calls are coaches and mentors and entrepreneurs and business owners and ministers, believe it or not, mental health professionals, you name it. And what I've noticed is it's actually been consistent. There is either they either are falling in a category of being like a false starter, and I've been there too. So this isn't judgment. This is just me identifying what I've even seen in myself at times. They get excited about something. They feel like they're heard from God. They get out there and they do the thing, but they only kind of put their toe in the water. They don't jump all the way in. It don't quite go the way they want it to go, or it didn't take off as fast as they wanted to, or life just came in and just chewed them up, right? Because the opposition and the resistance is going to be there. That's just a fact, right? And they stopped. And then they went on to something else. And especially those people like myself who are very, very creative. And so you end up being sort of a false starter, being all over the place, right? This is why it's important that we sit in that secret place and we get an understanding of who in the world am I and what has already been given to me. That's one of the questions I like to ask them. As I said, did you vet that this actually belongs to you before you're actually even going out there and trying to get it? And half of them look at me like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then I explain it a little bit, and then the light bulb moment kind of goes off, and they begin to see, oh, I didn't even think about that. And some of them, many of them have said, I feel like this is what God has called me to do. But then when you dig a little bit deeper, they just don't really believe it or really see the value in themselves because of all of the things that's happening in life and all of the circumstances. And that's when I just take some time to do my very best by God's grace to speak some life into them and to help them to see some things. But anyway, without going into detail about all of that, I say all this to say we cannot afford in this season of life to seek external validation. I think it's way too dangerous at this point. One, you don't even know what spirit someone else is operating from that's giving you advice or offering you this validation, right? And then two, then it becomes dependent on the outcome, and we can't afford that. I mean, maybe you can, but I can't. We can't afford it. I can't afford to invest any of my time, resources, or anything into the dream that God has given me if it's dependent on the outcomes I think that I should be getting. In other words, if it's dependent on, if somebody else likes it or not. You get my point? We can't afford it. I actually think it's way too dangerous. It's too dangerous because it can destroy the dream. It's too dangerous because it can actually thwart, trying to say that word, thwart the image you have of yourself. So if this person doesn't compliment me or, or validate, um, all that I've done or compliment me or whatever it is, then all of a sudden, or this person don't get my program. I've talked to a number of coaches on that one, right? Then all of a sudden they begin to, and I've done this myself, so I know this. You begin to lower your own value because then you think, well, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Maybe God didn't quite give. Maybe I'm not ready. And you start having all of these, um, making all these negative bank deposits. I guess that's a good way of putting it, right? Because you're seeking the external, right? But when you walk in that authority and in that power that God has given you, and in my humble opinion, you work heavily on that mindset. I'm not going to even go into that right now. On almost every clarity call, I end up spending some time doing mindset training with some people. I do like one or two mindset exercise. I almost have to because we will quote a scripture in a minute, you know, Romans 12:2 about being transformed by the renewing of our minds, or quote a scripture in a minute about being a child of God. And then when we go deep into a conversation, we spend the vast majority, 80% of our day stressed and worried. And then we quote scriptures and we pray, and then we spend 80% stressed and worried. You get my point? This is why the external cannot even come to the table. Like I hope this is making sense to you all, but the circumstances don't even get a vote. It can't come to the table. Can you imagine if it came to the table with Jesus when he was about to walk on water? And then all of the natural laws, right? All of the, I don't know, scientists or whatever, or whatever, engineers, people telling me, well, it's impossible. You can't walk on water because, that because of X, Y, and Z, or you're only one person. You don't even have an army. How are you going to be able to defeat, or you can't, if this should happen, you get my point. Like Jesus couldn't even, the circumstances didn't even get a vote. He didn't seek a vote. That's a good way of putting it. He didn't seek a vote. And what was so amazing about him, this is what I love about Jesus. You guys should read the book of John. Just focus on the book of John. You'll learn quite a bit about, well, the whole Bible really is about him, if you want my take on it, but the book of John. But what I love about him is even the praise from men, he didn't seek it. In fact, he didn't entrust himself to it. I think that's really interesting. So, I mean, you talk about a prime example. The external did not get a vote. He only spoke and did what God called him to do. And regardless of the external, he did what God called him to do. And he said, I only say what my father calls me to say. Can you imagine if just for like 1 hour we walked around like that? I know I'm drifting, you guys, but I'll come back. But can you imagine for 1 hour if that's how we lived our lives? I didn't even say a day, I said an hour. I strive to do that quite a bit. Honest to God, I do. Even on every last one of these clarity calls I've had, or when I have my live mentorship, on a weekly basis, I meet with members in the Unlocking Greatness community for spiritual growth, personal development, and entrepreneurship. And I try to always remember before I go into meeting, I just say, God, I'm working in partnership with you. Sit right here with me. And I literally tried, I know this may be weird for you all to hear. I literally tried to picture Jesus sitting right there with me, like standing right there with me. And every word I say, I'm just like picturing him right there. And if I say something kind of off, I just kind of picture him looking at me a certain kind of way, like, okay, you need to correct that. You know what I mean? Like, but can you imagine if for an hour we walked around like that? No external validation that we're seeking whatsoever. The past don't even matter. Your bank account don't balance don't matter. What you think is possible or not possible really doesn't matter because you're right there walking, talking, thinking, acting in that authority that's already been given to you. Can you imagine that? We don't have time to try to seek the external validation in any area of our lives. And that goes for um, looking for validation from others, even in terms of begging someone to love you. That's a whole nother subject. I wrote about that in one of my chapters. I think it's in Let Go or something, right? You don't have time for it. It's way too dangerous. It's too dangerous. So, anyway, I don't even know what title I'm going to give this episode. Uh, I'm probably going to call it something about not seeking external validation or walk as you have been called. Maybe I'll call it something like that. You are chosen, walk in that authority that's been given to you. But I pray to God that I'm beyond just encouraging you all. I think we've matured quite a bit to get beyond the words of I pray this encourage you, because encouragement lasts for like a little bit, and you walk away, you feel good. I pray that this transforms your thinking. I pray that somehow, for those of you all who are listening to this podcast episode, that you take it really seriously. I'm taking it serious, just so you know. Take it real serious. How do I let go of all of this external validation of any kind that I seek, whether I'm aware of it or not? And how do I walk as knowing I'm chosen, knowing I'm called to rule over this unique assignment that God has given me? And how do I, to the best that I can, stay in the presence of God and be reminded consistently of who is this person? Before I end, I want to say this one thing, something you all may not know that I do. Before I even leave my house to go to work, I always, I think I can say the word always. It's very rare that I'll leave out without having done this. Sometimes I think I have, but it's rare. Go ahead of my day before I step a foot out of the house. So I literally picture me, for example, if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of the clarity conversations that I've been doing lately, which I love. I'm so glad God placed that in my heart to do, because I get to talk to many of you all that I've never spoken to before on a live Zoom call. Um, Let me deviate. Let me just go off for one moment, and then I'm going to come back to what I was going to say about what I do before I leave the house. One of the things I do love about these clarity conversations, every last one of you all that's gotten on the call, what I love is you all, you all always say to me, Z, I didn't realize you really are on the call. Like I thought it was going to be a webinar, um, or I thought it was going to be something else. So I love the fact that when people get on the call, I love telling them that, this is not a webinar. This is a live conversation that we're having. This is not a sales presentation. I say that all the time as well, because I think people are used to being pitched on something like, no, this is not a webinar. This is not a sales presentation. Let's talk, and anyway, now let me get back to what I was saying. But before I leave the house, I do my very best to go ahead of the day and see the woman that God has already chosen, that this is who I am in this season. And so I literally, and this is the God honest truth, I literally, not only do I write it down, but I say these words. I'll say something like, for example, sometimes I can even see what I'm wearing. And I literally would have to go back upstairs and change clothes. And that part's a little frustrating when I'm already dressed. But then let's say I see me in a purple dress or I see me in a blue shirt. I know it may sound weird, but it's as if I have to go in the way that God showed me. So many times I will run my butt upstairs and literally have to change clothes because I'm like, oh, I wasn't wearing that. I was wearing white. But anyway, I would literally go through the day and see me even in the calls that I'm having, the clarity conversations or the live Zoom meetings I'm doing. And I would say things like, um, she speaks with love. She is humble. She speaks in the authority and in the power God has given her. Now, mind you, I'm writing this down and I'm speaking it, just so you know. She does not manipulate anyone. She does not lie or deceive anyone. When people see her, they see the light of God shining through her. She speaks with calmness. She doesn't talk as much. She listens. Like I can't explain it, but in some days it's different things that I hear or feel in the spirit and I write it down. But then when I walk out of the house, it's almost as if I don't want to say it's like acting or playing a role because then somebody could take that the wrong way, but it's almost as if the script has already been written. Like you already have the confirmation is a good way of saying it. It's almost like you have that confirmation of who you are, and now you walk in it. And that's what I've been telling a lot of people, in those calls and things I've been having is you can almost tell when someone's doing it and when they're not. And it's very rare that I even run across people that are doing that, to be honest with you, but you go ahead of your day already having seen it and gone through it, right? Even with the disturbances and the flaming arrows that come your way, you actually go ahead of it. So when the opposition and the resistance begins to come, as it normally will show up, you're not even caught off guard by it. In fact, one of the things, I'm probably going too deep into this. But one of the things that I've been talking about is that even when that opposition or that resistance comes, instead of you looking at it and running from it, and God knows I've had a lot, oh my God. But instead of running from it, you actually get excited by it. I know that sounds weird to some of y'all, but you get excited by it because it no longer is opposition, even though it may hurt in the moment, right? But it's not opposition. You look at it and you see a confirmation. You see that, oh my God, I'm on the right track. This is just a confirmation that has been sent to stop me. Does that make sense? Now, there's some other pieces to that, but I'm not going to go into all of that. So let me wrap up this podcast episode. Um, I forgot the title already that I'm going to give it, but I think I'm going to call it something about you've been chosen. Now it's time to walk in it. But it's very important that you all remember. We all remember. I don't want to seem like I'm telling you what I'm not dealing with myself and what I'm reminding myself of, or what I feel God is reminding me of. You do not seek that external validation. It's too dangerous to do that. In this season of life, you just can't. It's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. We have to go in the vision, in the vision, not division, in the vision that God has given us. We have to have clarity on that. And that's a whole nother thing. Clarity comes in motion. A lot of times we just kind of sit and we're just, we say we're waiting on the Lord, waiting on the Lord, waiting on the Lord. Um, that's another thing. You guys can tell when it's kind of late when I'm recording an episode because my mind kind of skips a little bit. And now I'm going into one of the clarity calls. But normally, when I hear a lot of people say they're waiting on the Lord, waiting on the Lord, and I think it's important to do that. You already know that. There's a chapter in my book called Hidden. There's sometimes when God hides you and there's just nothing you can do about it, but just learn and practice while you're being hidden so you can be ready when He reveals you. But I'd say the majority of the time, at least 75, 80% of the time, of people who say that to me, when you spend just a little bit of time digging beneath that, you'll find that, huh, it's not that God is hiding you. And I don't say this to them. They come to their own conclusion. They come to the conclusion that Z is just that I'm afraid, or I don't want to mess up, or I'm fearful, or I don't see the value in me, or I tried this before and it didn't work out. And so, sometimes we have to really be careful with those titles and those phrases that we feed ourselves when we're not walking out, in that authority and in that power that's been given to us. Anyway, I pray that this podcast episode helps someone. This is probably one of the ones where I've jumped around a little bit more because um, I'm just sitting here having a conversation as if you were right in front of me. To be honest with you, um, I think I'm a little. I feel. I don't know. I guess the word is kind of free. Um, I spent time at my son's gravesite today, and I can't explain it, but I feel every time when I go to his site and I look at the 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 sites that we purchased right next to his, and there's a little sign on it that says selected before need. I can't explain it, but every single time I look at it, I'm just reminded, Z, you don't need to seek any external validation. You don't need to be concerned at all with what another bag of water thinks of you. And by the way, that's a podcast episode you should look up. I think I recorded about 4 years ago called Don't Fear Bags of Water, because we mainly are made up of water. And that was just a revelation God gave me a long time ago when I was concerned about what other people think. But anyway, when I spent some time at his site and I'm just standing there and I just look, wow, at some point between now and whenever the good Lord calls me home, I'm going to be right there, right next to him. And I'll be 60 in just a couple more years. And I just thought, we don't have time to fear. Like, what is there to fear? What really is there to fear? You get it wrong, you make a mistake, and you probably will mess up. Somebody talk about you, going to say something. Well, even when you're doing your best, you still will have somebody that's got something to say, no matter what. Am I right or am I right? And I just sat there looking at that selected before need sign, and I don't know, it's just God is doing something. It's just a spirit of freedom that I feel. And when I say a spirit of freedom, meaning not being afraid of taking risks, taking chances, getting out there doing what God has called me to do, not being concerned with what people think or what they say, showing up authentically always, right? Like now, I'm a little, I'm jumping from one little thing to another, but you know what? If this helps you, amen. And if it don't, I'm still going to post this because I know that my heart in it is I love God. I feel free in my spirit to get out there and do what He's called me to do, how He's called me to do it. I'm not seeking external validation. Every single day, I'm praying that God keeps pride far from me, right? I'm asking for forgiveness of my sins every day because every day, some kind of way I mess up, right? And I'm also asking God to give me the boldness to do what He's called me to do, but in love, right? In humility, being authentic. Walking in his wisdom, walking in his power, but not seeking that external validation. All I want to hear him say is, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Well done." And that makes me feel free in my spirit to get out there and live and take chances. It's really not taking a chance, it's really walking in alignment with what God has called me to do. Anyway, I love you all. Let me end this podcast episode. This is probably one of my episodes where I've jumped around more than anything, but I pray that it helped someone. If it did, you all let me know in the comment section. I love you all tremendously. God knows I do. God knows I do. And I'm doing my very best to give from you all what God pours into my cup. And I pray that this has helped someone today. If you don't have your hands on a copy of Necessary, make sure you get your hands on a copy of it before my next book club meeting, which you all know is on the 11th of every month at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And if I haven't been on a clarity call with you, I'd love to be able to talk to you for a little bit. And for those of you who are looking for mentorship and looking to get some help, I welcome you to the Unlocking Greatness community. There's absolutely nothing like it that I know of. I had a lady that joined the other week and she said, "Z, I cried after our first meeting." She said, "It just," and I said, "Why did you cry?" And she says, "Because I've been looking for something like this for so long. And I'm just so glad to be here." So that really touched my heart. But if you're out there and you're looking for some help, I welcome you into Unlocking Greatness. We're having a wonderful time and they're growing tremendously. Anyway, I love you all. You're listening to Unlocking Greatness podcast with Zenja Glass. And I'll be talking to you all soon. Looking forward to reading your comments. Love you all. Bye bye.